All right, welcome back. I'm super excited to be here with you today. We have an amazing lesson today. It's going to be touching base on the really important principle of basic shapes. Basic shapes are the building blocks by which we design and create. The basic shapes are as follows. You have squares, circles, you have triangles, and then obviously other shapes that you can use. But the basic shapes that I like the most are the square and the circle. So my favorite are the square and the circle. These other shapes that you can utilize, rectangles, all the other stuff, are not as easy to use because they could be any shape, any size, right? Now it looks like a square, but it's not. So I am not going to have you use any of these basic shapes. If you want to create these basic shapes, just use the clock method that we've talked about in the past. The quick version of the clock method is, if this is a clock, you get to see what time is this angle, put it on the clock. This is 12, 1, 2, 3. So it's about 1:30, and that'll get you your angle. So you can take that angle, bring it down, and mimic it, and you'll notice it's the exact same angle. And you utilize that with everything. And so the clock method is very important to have in your back pocket as we try to navigate through these basic shapes. The basic shape that I want you to learn first is the circle. So what I'm going to have you do is actually take and create a paper, and what I want you to do is I want you to put your pencil in your hand like so. So it's like you're reaching out to somebody, and you place it in your hand with the tip at your finger, and then you grip it like this. You're going to do a motion with your pencil. You'll notice that my wrist stays locked. This elbow is not really moving. It's the arm, it's this joint right here that you're going to be moving. And you're going to take it and you're going to put the tip down, and you're going to take it and you're going to scroll around, and you're going to keep scrolling until it's the same width as it is height. And then you know that this is not good, that part's not good, but you can see overall where that circle looks good, right? That's the circle you're going to use. Obviously I'm using a Sharpie here, but I want you to utilize a pencil. Use a pencil. So once you have the basic circle, one of the things you can do is you can go like this, and you're going to measure how tall it is, and you're going to draw that same height here, and you're going to measure how wide it is, and it should be the same width as it is tall. And what it does is it fits inside a square, right? So that's why squares and circles are the ideal shapes to be utilizing and thinking about, because even on my face, you can see where a square would fit to make it square, and then you could utilize that as a measuring stick. Okay, and we'll talk about portraits on another lesson. But today we're doing basic shapes, and this is an exciting lesson because when you utilize this, it will change the way you see what you're drawing, and you'll see like an artist. I have this vintage coloring book of Charlie Brown, and the scene that I'm taking it from is when he's running towards the football. I love that scene because he fell for it every time. I loved when he would run and he would fall on his back, because it just showed how trusting he was, even to somebody that had really taken advantage of him every single time. So how are we going to accurately draw this? Well, if you wanted to place it correctly, you'd need to measure out and see where he's placed. And he's just below the third mark. So if we cut our paper into thirds, he starts here and he goes just below. So that helps us place where he's running, okay? After that, we need to look for basic shapes. Well, actually, let's look at the overall angle that he's sitting at. So what time is it from this point down his body to this point? What time is that? Well, if you remember from a previous lesson, we have this clock. And you can place it anywhere you want on the line. You can place it at the top, you can place it at the bottom. I usually like to do the bottom so that I can see. And if you look and we turn it exactly to where 12 o'clock is straight up, that's going to give us the time. And it looks like it's 10:45. Okay? So we can take that information and we can actually go from the ground, which we've drawn here. We can put a dot right here, and we can go up at 10:45 at that time, up to the tip of his head, and we'll have that angle, okay? That'll help us. And usually I don't actually draw the angle. I'll actually just imagine it in my head. But this time we're gonna draw it. Okay, next we're gonna use the circle, which is my favorite tool to use. And can anybody see a circle? I think you can. It's not a perfect circle, but it will help us get there. So I'm actually going to identify a perfect circle as perfect as I can get it. Okay, so there's that circle. And this is the tip of his head where the little hair comes out. Okay, well, I'm going to draw that circle. I'm going to go around. Notice how I'm using my wrist and it's not working. So you want to switch it to where your finger's right here. Obviously, I'm holding it further back so I'm not covering the drawing. But you're going to circle around until you get that circle that you were trying to get. And I'm actually trying to make it similar in size so that it will be accurate. Now that I have that circle, I can use it as a measuring stick. So I have 1, 2 circles. We'll bring it to here. So I'm going to take that 1, 2 circles. We'll bring it to there. And now I know where his shorts are. What I just did was I used the basic shape of the circle as an anchor. The anchor method is where you finalize the main thing that's the most important, and his head is the most important thing. You decide how big that's going to be, and then you use it as a measuring tool to measure everything else out. So I could blow this up, on a wall and make it very accurate by drawing a giant circle and using that circle to measure out all the different parts. For example, how far is it down to the bottom of the front of his foot? 1 circle. So I measure, and there's the bottom of the front of his foot. And I could actually I'm just gonna put a little line to say it's actually going up right there. Now, that body doesn't look right to us because we're not used to heads being that huge, but this is a cartoon. So it's important to keep in mind that you need to measure and not let your brain lie to you and tell you how big things are. You actually need to focus on pieces and parts. I'm not drawing Charlie Brown at all. I'm drawing circles, angles, and it's just not Charlie Brown. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out where exactly does this neck come out in this circle. And if I cut the circle in half, why did I choose to see where his neck was? Because I already saw in my mind by imagining where the center line would be, and that's where I know the neck comes out. Okay, notice how I didn't draw the neckline exactly 12 o'clock. It's slightly curved, and that's on purpose. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to see that what time it is from here to there, and I'm going to mimic that angle, and like that, like so. Now, what do you guys notice is wrong with my drawing so far? Well, I'll tell you what's wrong. When I drew this circle, I didn't pay attention to where this crossed it. So now I need to move it down, actually. I need to move it down to where it's only going to leave this tiny little triangle right here. And you see that little triangle? So I noticed that I made a mistake. So now I need to get that same angle and bring it down to here. Okay? Which means that this part is inaccurate and this line is no longer needed. But this does need to be moved over to here to make it accurate. So that's what actually showed me that I had done it wrong, was the shape of this triangle, this basic shape right here. Okay, now it's going to be more accurate when I put the neck, and it's going to cross over and have this little part hanging out right here, right there. Okay, where else can we find some basic shapes? Remember, we're not drawing what we're drawing until the very end. At the very end, we'll draw what we're drawing, but not right now. Okay, so here's another basic shape. Here's another basic shape. Okay, here's another basic shape. Those are all circles. Circles are my favorite, so I'm going to do circles. How do I make sure that they're the right size? Well, in relationships, that's how you're going to be able to tell. So this one right here is slightly over and it circles around. And that's just a guess at how big it is, but it looks right. It looks like this is a Pokemon ball, and that looks like a Pokemon ball, right? The next thing I'm going to do is say this one right here, which is sticking out from here to there, and from there to there. Using the clock method, you'll notice that it's actually going different angles. That's going to help me place that circle, and it will automatically help me size it up to the right size. Now the nose is from the center of this, because I'm using this circle as an anchor, from the center of this there, it's slightly downhill, barely. And instead of using the clock method that time, I just said it's not quite 9 o'clock or 3 o'clock. So, and it's a little bit, tiny bit smaller, but it's slightly downhill from that one. Okay, the next thing we're gonna do is we need to figure out the overall shape of his body using a basic shape. Normally at this point, I'd stop using basic shapes, except for maybe for his leg down here, where I know that his pants are it actually goes up like this, and it kind of swoops up, and that could still make a circle. So I'd be tempted to do that. But we're going to, well, you know, usually I would use just angles, the clock method, and just angle it out. But I want to use basic shapes. So let's continue to use basic shapes to build this guy out. I can see a circle here. Notice how I'm using circles. I can see a circle could possibly be in here. It's kind of a stretch, but there's a small circle right here. I went too far with that one, but it's right in here. I could do a circle on the tip of his shoe, and I could utilize a circle right here. So let's go ahead and build those circles out. And I kind of started building this one out, and I'm just gonna circle it up here. And then this one goes from this side, crosses over, this side, crosses over, and then it comes around. Remember, we are not drawing Charlie Brown. We are not drawing what we're drawing until the very end. Look, I put that shoe down too far, it looks like. Because if this is his knee, it looks like it should be about here. So I'm just gonna adjust slightly. And here's the coolest part about that. When you're not so scared to make a mistake, when you're not so full of yourself that you think you have to be perfect on every single thing you do, like I used to be, you make a mistake, you fix it, and it's over. You move forward, you're done. Not a big deal. When you're a perfectionist, you really slow down your ability to grow and learn. It stops you. Don't turn into a perfectionist. Well, until the very end. You can be as big of a perfectionist as you want once you're putting on the final details, right? Until then, though, it's a process that you have to understand. The perfect process is full of mistakes that you get over quickly. Because if you make a mistake and you just like freeze up, that's not good. Don't do that. All right. The next basic shapes that I'm going to look for, I'm going to use a tiny little circle here and a tiny little circle here to help me make the shoes. I'm going to look at the relationship between this, and I'm going to see this, and it looks like it's going to be right, this drops down here, so it'll be right here, and it's pretty small because it goes pretty tight. Okay, and then this shoe back here, the relationship between the front of it is right here, and it goes right here. And this is the relationships that I've been talking about. Relationships between the basic shapes is how you map everything out. This looks like a little bug or a caterpillar. It just looks like a bunch of circles or gears, maybe internal clockworks. It's not Charlie Brown. We're not drawing what we're drawing. We're just creating a map. Okay? And usually I'll do this so quickly using the clock method that people think it's magic. But I'm teaching you how to think so that you can create magic. People, after you've practiced this method enough times, you're going to see the circle and you're going to be able to draw it. And instead of like, you'll stop here and then you'll extend it out and create a pear shape that will connect right here. And then you're going to see this circle so well, you're only going to draw half of it. And then automatically you're going to see that this angle, you'll use the clock method, angle it up and swoop it, and it will create the outline of the face. So what I'm teaching you is how to think. I'm doing it slowly and methodically because if you understand how it works, you'll be able to do it and practice it and get way better at it and make mistakes faster, because the faster you make mistakes, the faster you learn. Okay, so we've got all the basic shapes that I'm going to need to map this out. And I would normally at this point, I would just draw it with a Sharpie marker because I've done enough art that I don't need to be careful, but I want to do it carefully with you. I know this is the longest drawing you've probably done, but it's going to look amazing, I promise. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and connect things. So I'm going to drop this angle, and notice how I don't draw with a curve. The only curves I'm making on this are the circles. And I did curve this because I was showing you an example, but normally I would draw that with straight lines too. So this is a rough draft that we're making. This isn't the final drawing. So we need this angle here. It drops down, goes across here. This angle drops down, and then there's an angle that angles this way, and then there's an angle that angles back. This angle angles up here, and I'm going to actually kind of point out which one I'm doing. So what time is this? This angle right here. 10:30? it's almost the same angle that we had here, which is like 1040, right? So it's a little bit sharper, but it's there. Then I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go up. And this is not quite 12, but almost. And then it's going to go in there. This comes across here and goes up to meet the pants here. And there's a line that cuts right across here. Okay, so this is all straight lines, but you can see the curves even in the straight lines. Okay, and I'm gonna move this to the side now so that you can still see it. But it's so that I can see this better. So we've got the shirt comes down out of the arm, goes over, down, here, goes up, over, over. Notice, even though that's a circle, I went straight lines there because I want my brain to think about straight lines and not what I'm drawing. Don't draw what you're drawing. Don't let your brain start thinking, I know what that is, that's a shoe. No, it's not. It's straight lines, little pieces. When you break up a goal into tiny little pieces, you don't get overwhelmed. Your brain doesn't kick in and start lying to you and telling you can't do this or that or whatever. So breaking it up into tiny little pieces is very important. And there's this little scribble mess. I'm going to draw a generic angle for the line of the shirt. Notice how this one, I'm actually going to curve that one a little bit, curve this one a little bit, and bring this down here, up. The arm itself will be 4 fingers, and it's going to be slightly in. We're going to put a finger here, 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 and here. And then I'm just going to use straight lines to connect those. That comes up. And this one's kind of bulbous. Okay? So just angle, 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 and you're using the clock method. That's how I can draw angles pretty accurately. All right, so then I'm gonna actually use an oval because I want that thumb to look oval. I'm gonna use another oval, but it has a circle at the end in my mind. That oval has a circle right here. And then it's gonna be, this one comes down like that. I'm gonna bring the stomach down, over, 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 and swoop this. So there's the whole body. And I'm gonna draw this little line right here to make his collar, because, you know, Charlie Brown's fancy. This actually goes straight down, and this goes into his finger. Okay, so there's the body. We still haven't drawn anything but lines, shapes, angles. Okay, this part's pretty easy because it's a cartoon, and it's a simplified cartoon. But his eyebrow comes. I'm going to do straight lines. And I'm going to erase the front half of this so that I can see the relationship between the ear and the eyebrow better. So it's actually going to be in here more. And then it's going to come down, which means I need to bring this over. Yep. Even I make mistakes, but I catch them. I catch them fast because I don't expect perfection. And I'm erasing out some of these guidelines so we can see it a little bit better. All right, and his eye is sitting way up here. And his mouth goes up, over, down, down, up, over, down to this point here. Okay, at this juncture, if this was a professional drawing, I would take it over and I would trace out all the lines that I want to keep on the new sheet of paper. At this point, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to use the Sharpie marker and bring it home right here, right now. So I'm only going to focus on the things that I want to keep. I want to keep this line, but I'm going to actually bring this up, separated, and I'm bringing the head up a little bit higher than that original so that it's there. And then I'm going to bring this out here and drop it thicker right here. And then thinner line. Thick and thin lines is something that we will go over later, but it helps sell heavy areas, value areas, and just gives it more interesting look. Notice how I changed the shape of this circle so it's not perfect. And then this right here is a thick ending to the mouth, end of the mouth. And I'm gonna move the hair back to where I had it before. And I'm changing the curvature of it. Because this is when you can be a perfectionist, is when you're done drawing and you've made all the mistakes, your brain has an easier time seeing the problems. It has an easier time noticing where you may have gone wrong a little bit. And you're able to draw more accurately when you are doing the finalizing of the lines. Fingers can be hard, but they don't have to be, because all you have to do is just tell your brain, I'm not drawing fingers, I'm drawing angles and shapes. And then your brain doesn't take over and ruin it. It just draws what it sees piece by piece. Breaking it into tiny pieces makes it so that your brain doesn't lie to you. And the shorts come up and around. And this is where you smooth out all the straight lines that you drew. You just take them and you smooth them out. And you'll notice I'm leaving some white spots because that's how Charles Schulz drew, is he would leave some empty spots in certain places just from scribbling. He wasn't all about perfectly blackened out stuff. See how I'm circling around everything, making it nice and smooth. So this lesson was more about how to think than it was about how to draw. And voila, there it is, your final drawing. And yes, did it take half an hour to get there? Because I wanted to explain it really slowly so that you could capture everything that I was teaching. We talked about the anchor method. I want you to remember the anchor method. I want you to remember what that means. So, if there's comment section on whatever platform you find this video, if you will try to explain to me what you think the anchor method is all about. If you're correct, who knows? You might win something. Maybe even this drawing. Thanks for joining me. Next time we'll talk more about, we talked about the anchor method. We talked about the relationships between objects. We talked about the clock method and basic shapes. This was a huge crash course on helping you figure things out. And if I would have had this crash course when I was in second grade, I would have watched this over and over and over and over and over and over and listened to every aspect of it, because it would have changed the trajectory at which I draw. I'd be an insane, I'd probably have been an animator or something. I wanted to be a Disney Imagineer. I still kind of do. So if anybody knows an Imagineer out there that can hook me up for, I don't know, an internship or something so I can get that off my bucket list, I would love to do that. Disney's not the same company it used to be, but I still think it has the best opportunities to create three-dimensionally. So anyway, thank you so much for joining me. We'll see you next time.